Hello students, Professor Benavides here. I want to talk about a topic that was covered at the end of chapter 6 that dealt with how you can pass a very long string to the print function and comply with the convention of having no more than 80 characters of code on the screen. And at the same time, we can go ahead and review dictionaries. Let's use VS Code and create our first little example. And we'll go ahead and I'm going to save it right away. I'm going to go ahead and call it pizza. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on the desktop. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define our dictionary. And let's define pizza. And we'll start off with an opening curly bracket. Press enter. And as you know, dictionaries is key value pairs. So we'll start off with our first key, which is crust. And the value would be thick. I like thin, but other people may like thick, right? Toppings is our next key. And we're going to use a list here because we can many times want more than one topping. To use the example that's in the book, we'll add mushrooms and extra cheese. Of course, if it was my pizza, we'll be using anchovies, right? Okay, and we always go ahead and put a trailing comma so that we can be ready for the next key value pair. Okay, so this is our dictionary. Now, since we're looking back on the chapter, for those of you that have other programming backgrounds, we can say that dictionaries are Python's implementation of a data structure that is more generally known as an associative array. A dictionary consists of a collection of key value pairs. Each key value pair maps the key to its associated value. So later on, when you study in computer science, you'll take a class on data structures, and you'll be getting into that, in more detail. So that's our dictionary, and the dictionary has a list nested in it, right? So now we're going to go ahead and summarize the order. So we'll say print. And in this particular case, we're going to use an F string. We're going to say you ordered A, and I'm just going to put the placeholder in here, and I'm going to come back and fill that out. Okay. All right, so here's an example of a really long line. Let me go ahead and put in what we have in the placeholder. I'm going to access the value for crust. The way we do that is we specify the name of the dictionary, square brackets, and then crust. So that will say, that'll end up saying you ordered a thick crust pizza, right? So here's the idea. So the author says that this line, this string is going beyond 80. He didn't really say that, but that's what's implying. It's too long. The convention is what? We should stop at like 7, 9, right? So using Visual Studio Code, as I go left and right here on the lower left, I can see that that I'm on column 82. So how would you deal with this? Now he doesn't show you this, he just shows you the end result. So basically he says, you come to the place more or less where you want to take it to the next line, finish it off with a quote, press enter, indent and put in another quote. And then he says that Python will know that these two strings should be joined together. Let me go ahead and run this so that we can make sure that it's running right. And it says, yeah, you ordered a thick crust pizza with the following toppings. You want to be checking for spelling as you're doing this. It's not uncommon to misspell words. So that was, I think, a more natural way in which people build. Also notice that I have a blank line here to separate the sections of code so that we can very easily see the different sections of code. So now I'm going to go ahead and loop through the list. So I'll say for. Now I'm going to be looping through toppings, and so I'm going to use the singular version of toppings. So I'll say for topping in pizza, and then I'll use the square bracket here to get the value for toppings. All right, and finish this off with a colon, and then say print, have another F string, and we'll do the escape code for tab, and then we'll put in another little placeholder, and we will be looping through topping. And as you all remember, topping is a variable, okay? That's the one neat thing about Visual Studio Code. When you point to it, it tells you what it is, variable topping. And then we've got pizza being a dictionary, right? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be iterating through the values in this list. Let me go ahead and run this, because if you have a mistake, you want to go ahead and find it right away. So let me go ahead and run this, and it runs just fine. You ordered a thick crust pizza with the following orders. Again, remember, make sure you have everything, your text spelled correctly. Okay, so this is the way, the way he dealt with a long line of code. Now notice that because you put it on 2 lines here does not affect it being on 2 lines when you print it out. If you wanted it to be printed out on 2 lines, we would use an escape code for a new line. Like you wanted to, you would put a backslash, end there. But that's not what we want to do. We wanted to comply with the idea that we shouldn't go beyond 79 characters, right? Or 80, 79, 80, right? So let me go ahead and show you how this was done in the previous book, because F strings were not introduced until, what did he say, 3.6, 3.7, right? So in the previous book, he did it in a way that may be familiar to those of you who have other programming background. Like if you've taken Java or C++, we learned about concatenation with the plus sign, right? So let's go ahead and try that out. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of me building another file, I'm just going to go ahead and continue here and show you how this is done. And the reason why I'm showing you the older way is that in your first job, you may end up having to maintain code, and there's going to be a lot of older code that uses this style, so you may as well be familiar with it. I know I've covered it in previous chapters, but it's always good to have a blast from the past kind of idea. So let's pass a long line, a long string to the print function, and we're not going to use a formatted string. So we'll say print, and we're just going to go ahead and pass a string. So we'll say you ordered a, and notice how I have a string. I'm going to come to the end of there, and I'm going to use the concatenation. And in this particular case, instead of a placeholder, I'm going to have to go ahead and say pizza, square brackets, and in this particular case, crust. And then come outside there and put in another plus sign. So that will give, when you say pizza of crust, that's the key. The key will give you the value. So it'll say thick. You ordered a thick. and then I'm going to continue to build my string here. Putting in the dash, crust pizza with the following toppings, right? And let me go ahead and run that just to make sure it looks the same, and it does. Now what I'm going to do here is to separate the previous code from this other code for comparison purposes. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a print statement here, so that the line, so that look, when I look at the output, I can visually tell the difference between both of them. So here's the first idea, and then I'm building the second idea, and as you can see, I'm building it the same. I always like to kill terminal, that way I don't end up having all the previous prints from the past. So the idea here is, how do I go ahead and put this on the next line? You know, so I come to the place where I want to concatenate, right? So like at the end of pizza, right? And I come to the end of pizza, and I'm going to put in the, you know, double quotes on here, and I'm going to go ahead and put space bar and plus sign, okay? And then I'm going to press enter. I'm going to press tab and put in the double quotes again, okay? So as you can see, this is syntactically correct because I have a string concatenated with either a string or a variable. In this case, the variable is the list that's embedded in the dictionary. So I have string plus list plus string plus another string, right? And I went ahead and used the plus sign, or actually we should call it the concatenation operator, would be more appropriate. And the next step on here would be to go ahead and to do my loop. So I'll say for topping in pizza, square bracket. In this case, we're gonna loop through toppings. Now that part hasn't changed yet. The part that changes is in the print statement, because we're not using, remember, we're not going to use a formatted string. So in this case, I'm going to have to use the concatenation operator again, but I'm going to use escape code of a \T, and then concatenate that with topping. Okay. All right, so now I'm ready to go ahead and run my code and see if they look the same. So the first one here says you ordered a thick crust pizza with the following toppings, mushroom and extra pizza, and the other one does exactly the same. So there, my friends, that's your little demo of how you would go ahead and build a Python application using a dictionary that has a nested list. And on top of that, we compared and contrasted the old way versus the new way of dealing with a long string that is sent to the print function. The new way does involve using formatted strings, and I'm totally sold on formatted strings, and hopefully you are too. Like, for example, right now, when you look at line 8 and you compare it with the amount of work that you have to go through in line 17, and I didn't make any syntactical errors there, but I can tell you right now that a lot of people make more syntactical errors when you have to use a lot of concatenation versus this formatted string. The only problem with the formatted string is you just got to get used to the idea that you're going to have these placeholders and they're in this curly brackets. Once you get past that, and that you got to use a little F outside of the string, once you get past that, you should really be sold on the idea that it's a lot easier to go ahead and work with. Again, I do offer this comparison because, as I said many times, when you're in your first job, you've got to maintain code. This code may have older programming ideas, so it's always good to know you know, previous topics. And he didn't cover that in this book. He just went ahead and covered the formatted string, which is the way he dealt with strings in every chapter. But other than that, that's all I got to say. I hope that you found this presentation useful, and I will see you in the next meeting or next video, shall I say.